She felt them before she saw them. The way the air changed, turned colder, denser, as if mourning something it could never name. Cecilia hadn't opened the door yet. She didn't have to. Her body already knew. Her bones, brittle with grief, braced themselves. It was March 15th. Again. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the lock, the click echoing through the silence of the house like a gunshot. Then, slowly, she pulled the door open. There they were. 12 roses, blood-red and flawless, lying on the welcome mat like a wound. Fresh. Alive. Still wet with dew, despite the dry night air. No note. No ribbon. No explanation. Just the same offering, left at the same hour, every year since Laura had died screaming in her arms on the stone floor of that cursed little town. Cecilia stared down at them, fury and sorrow snarling inside her like starving dogs. She didn't cry. Not anymore. She had forgotten how. She bent to pick up the bouquet, fingers brushing against the damp petals. She pressed them to her face, not to smell them, but to feel something. Anything. But there was only the cold. There was always only the cold now. Bitch, she whispered. I'll find you. The first year, the roses broke her. The second, they infuriated her. By the third, she was already hunting. Digging through police reports, chasing whispers about pale women who disappeared into mist, learning to read between the lies in the archives of the supernatural. By year 4, she was training with people who never gave names. Year 5, she waited up all night, gun in hand, eyes on the door. But nothing. Just the roses. Always the roses. As if the monster had a heart. As if it thought flowers were enough to undo a murder. Tonight was the 6th year. And something felt different. Cecilia placed the roses on the kitchen table like an offering to a ghost, then sat across from them and stared. There was something accusatory about them, like they were watching her. She poured herself a drink, something dark and sharp. She didn't flinch when the ice cracked. Midnight had passed. She should go to bed. But her body wouldn't let her move. And then she saw her, across the street, standing under the flickering streetlight, unmoving. A woman. No, not a woman. Something else. Her figure was tall, unnaturally still. Her long black coat stirred gently in a wind that didn't exist. Pale face. Black eyes. Hair like spilled ink. Cecilia's breath caught. It was her. It had to be. Every nerve in her body screamed. Rage. Terror. Grief. Recognition. She stood slowly, not daring to blink. The woman didn't move. Just watched. Watched her like she had every right in the world to be there. Cecilia took a step forward. Another. She opened the door again. The night poured in around her, damp and silent. The figure still didn't move. Didn't flinch. That was when Cecilia realized something was different. The woman wasn't watching her with hunger, or arrogance, or pride. She was watching her with something that almost looked like sorrow. Cecilia crossed the porch, one foot on the step. The figure raised one gloved hand, not to wave, not to beckon, but to place something down on the ground. Then she turned and vanished into the shadows. Cecilia ran, heart pounding, blood burning. She crossed the street in seconds. Nothing. Empty sidewalk. No trace. No scent. No sound. Only a folded note, resting where the woman had been standing. Cecilia bent down, snatched it up, fingers shaking. She opened it. For words. I didn't want it. The handwriting was delicate, slanted, beautiful. The ink smudged at the edges, like it had been written in rain. On the back of the note, in smaller letters, almost invisible under the moonlight. She asked me to. Cecilia couldn't breathe. Her vision swam. Lies. It had to be lies. Laura couldn't. She folded the note with trembling hands, clutched it to her chest. Her knees buckled beneath her. And for the first time in years, she wept. Cecilia didn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table all night, the roses between her and the note, like relics of a ritual she didn't understand. Her eyes were swollen from crying, something she hadn't done in years. She hated herself for it. She hated the weakness, the doubt, the flicker of pain that wasn't rage. She should have stormed out there, tracked the creature through the darkness, hunted her down like the monster she was. But instead, she'd collapsed, crumbled like a woman mourning a fresh grave. Because she said Laura asked for it. The words repeated in her head, over and over, a poison she couldn't spit out. Cecilia didn't believe it. She refused to believe it. But something inside her, something that had never stopped asking why, clung to the possibility like a bruise. What if it was true? What if Laura had kept something from her? And what if that something had cost her life? By morning, the roses had started to wilt. She didn't throw them away. She wrapped them in the same paper they'd arrived in and tucked them into the freezer, next to the vodka and the lies. Then she changed clothes, strapped her knife to her thigh, and left the house without locking the door. If the vampire wanted to return, let her. Cecilia would be waiting next time, with more than grief in her chest. She went back to the street where she'd seen her, walked the block again. And again. Nothing. No trace. No scent. Just the ache in her bones and the name in her mouth like ashes. Adriana. That was the name written in the report, hidden in the margins of an old, yellowed case file she'd stolen from an anonymous vampire hunter 3 years ago. A name whispered in Romania, in Venice, in a convent sealed records from 1872. Adriana Voss. Eternal. Elusive. And now here, the town was quiet. Ordinary. Birds chirping. Dogs barking. The banality of life pressing in around her like a mockery. She walked until her feet ached, until the sun was high and sweat clung to her skin. No sign. No shadow. But Cecilia had learned how to wait. She'd spent years sharpening her patience into a weapon. That night, she returned to the same street. No roses this time. No notes. Just the memory of a face like carved porcelain and eyes that didn't belong to a predator, but to someone haunted. Cecilia hated that she'd noticed. Hated that she remembered the curve of her jaw, the stillness of her mouth, the grief in her stare. Monsters didn't get to grieve. The third night, she found her. Not in the street. Not at her door. But in the cemetery. Cecilia had started walking there every evening, on instinct. There was something about the silence, the way shadows moved between graves, that made her feel closer to Laura. Tonight, she wasn't alone. Adriana stood near a crooked angel statue, back to her, hair unbound and glowing under the moonlight like ink in water. Cecilia froze. Her breath caught. The woman, vampire, turned. Slowly. As if she'd known Cecilia was there all along. You came, Adriana said. Her voice was low. Velvet and knives. Say her name, Cecilia spat. Laura. Adriana's eyes didn't flinch. Laura. It hit Cecilia like a blow to the ribs. Hearing that name in that voice. It made her dizzy. Sick. Alive. You killed her. I tried to save her. Liar. She was dying, Adriana said. No emotion in her voice. Just quiet ruin. She didn't want you to know. She didn't want you to watch her fade. Cecilia stepped forward. She was mine, not yours. She was never mine, Adriana said. She didn't love me, but she trusted me. She begged me to turn her. I refused. At first. Her hands were bare. Pale. Elegant. Cecilia couldn't stop staring at them. Those were the hands that touched Laura last. Held her through death. Then why did you do it? She asked, voice raw. Because I couldn't watch her suffer anymore. Because she made me promise. Adriana looked away. And I failed. The wind picked up. It carried the scent of soil, stone, something old and aching. Cecilia's heart pounded so loud it hurt. You expect me to believe that? No, Adriana said. I expect you to kill me. She stepped forward, opened her coat slightly, revealing her chest, her heart exposed. Do it. Cecilia froze. Her hand went to her blade, but she didn't draw it. Not yet. Why the roses? She asked. Adriana's mouth tightened. Because I think of her. Every year. Every night. Every hour. And I know I don't have the right. But I do it anyway. Cecilia's throat burned. You think flowers make up for it? No, Adriana said softly. Nothing will. They stood there in silence, time stretching like wire. Then Cecilia said, If she really asked you, prove it. Adriana met her gaze. And for the first time, Cecilia saw something behind the cold pain. Come with me, the vampire said. I'll show you. Cecilia followed her without speaking, her steps measured, silent, deadly. The blade pressed tight against her thigh, her heart hammering in a rhythm that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the chaos unfolding inside her. Adriana didn't look back once.
She didn't need to.
She walked with the eerie grace of someone who had walked through centuries, her long coat dragging slightly behind her, brushing against old leaves and forgotten dirt paths. They left the cemetery through a broken iron gate and crossed a wooded path that led away from town. The night was thick with silence, but Cecilia could hear everything. The rustle of nocturnal things in the underbrush, the whisper of Adriana's breath, low and even, as if she didn't need it, but kept the habit. After 20 minutes, they stopped in front of what looked like an abandoned chapel. The roof was sagging, the stained glass window shattered, a cross half buried in ivy. Adriana paused, then pushed the heavy wooden door open with a strength that defied her delicate frame. Inside, the air was thick with dust and candle wax, the scent of old incense lingering like memory. Here, Adriana said, her voice barely above a whisper. She lit a single candle from her coat, the flame flickering unnaturally steady, casting shadows that moved too slow on the cracked stone walls. This is where she found me. Cecilia's eyes narrowed. She came here 5 years ago, the night before it happened. She waited here until I woke. Cecilia clenched her fists. Why? Adriana didn't answer immediately. She crossed the room and knelt beside what looked like a sealed trapdoor beneath the altar. With one fluid movement, she pried it open. A breath of cold, dry air spilled out, thick with stone and secrets. Because this is where I sleep, Adriana said. And she knew I would listen if she came to me with her truth. Cecilia hesitated, then descended after her. The steps were narrow, slick with moisture, and the walls pressed close. It felt like entering a crypt, and maybe it was. At the bottom, the chamber opened into a wide underground room lit with a dozen oil lamps. The ceiling arched above them, and the air tasted of stone, silver, and memory. In the center stood an old writing desk. On it, a leather-bound book. Cecilia stepped closer, eyes narrowing. What is this? Her words, Adriana said. She wrote them before she asked me to do it. She wanted you to have them if it failed. Cecilia's stomach twisted. Her mouth was dry. You're lying. I'm not. Adriana pushed the book toward her. Read it. With hands that refused to stop shaking, Cecilia opened the book. It wasn't Laura's handwriting, not at first. The first pages were written in a different script, neat and ancient. But then, further in, her heart stopped. She knew that curve of letters. That messy flourish at the end of L's. The uneven spacing. It was her.
Laura.
Cecilia flipped the pages wildly, breath catching, tears already rising. March 11th. I've decided not to tell her. Cecilia wouldn't understand. Or maybe she would. Maybe that's what terrifies me. March 13th. The pain is getting worse. I couldn't stand today. She thinks it's the flu. She doesn't know I've been hiding the blood-stained towels. The scans said 6 months. That was 4 months ago. March 14th. I found her. She was everything the legends said she would be. Beautiful. Terrible. Silent as a statue. I begged her. I fell to my knees. Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. I told her I didn't want to die like this. That I didn't want to leave Cecilia remembering me as a body in a hospital bed. I wanted her to remember me wild.
Alive. Ours.
I wanted one more chance. Cecilia dropped the book. It hit the floor with a dull sound, but the echo seemed to roar inside her skull. Adriana didn't move.
Didn't speak.
She just watched. Waiting. Suffering. Cecilia's vision blurred. Why didn't she tell me? She whispered.
Why?
Because she wanted to spare you the pain, Adriana said. She didn't want you to see her break. Cecilia shook her head. I would have loved her anyway. I would have held her through every second. She didn't have to go to you. But she did. Adriana's voice was quiet. And I said no, again and again. But she was relentless. She believed that if she came back changed, you would never have to see her die. She believed it was mercy. And you call what happened mercy? Cecilia hissed. She died in agony. She screamed in my arms. Adriana's eyes darkened, a shadow crossing her face. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I don't hear it every night? She turned, moved to a tall cabinet, opened it. Inside, an old dress, bloodstained, torn. Cecilia's breath caught. Is that what she wore that night? I kept it. Why? Adriana looked at her, something raw in her expression. Because it's all I have left of the woman I failed. Cecilia's body trembled. She didn't understand what she was feeling.
Rage. Sorrow.
But also something far more dangerous. Empathy. Connection. She wanted to hate her. She needed to hate her. But the longer she stood in that room, the more the lines blurred. You loved her, Cecilia said. Not a question. A revelation. Adriana's gaze dropped. From the moment I saw her. But she never returned it. She only had eyes for you. Cecilia should have felt vindicated. Instead, it felt like being torn open. Then why did you agree to help her? Adriana's voice dropped to a whisper. Because when you love someone, even from afar, you give them what they ask for. Even if it kills them. Even if it kills you. The silence between them thickened. Cecilia could feel the pulse of her own heart, wild and wrong. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw the book at the wall. But she didn't. She just stood there, in the middle of a crypt, surrounded by Laura's secrets, facing the woman who had taken everything from her and given her back a piece of the truth. Her throat ached. You should have saved her. Adriana looked up. Her eyes shimmered, not with hunger, but something far more human. I tried. The room tilted. Cecilia didn't realize how close she'd stepped. Inches from Adriana now. She could smell her, something cold and old, but not unpleasant. Her mouth was dry. She hated that her heart stuttered. She hated the way Adriana was looking at her. Not like a predator, but like someone who had been alone for too long. Cecilia's voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Why are you showing me all this now? Adriana's answer came soft, nearly broken. Because I never got to say goodbye. She didn't return home that night. Cecilia walked through the darkness until her legs burned, until her mind went numb, until the pages of Laura's journal stopped echoing inside her skull like the last words of a ghost she could no longer hate. The stars watched her like indifferent gods. The wind bit at her skin, but she welcomed the sting. Anything to feel something real, something that didn't slip between her fingers like guilt and memory. She didn't know how to carry it, this truth. It wasn't relief. It wasn't closure. It was worse. Because it wasn't clean. It wasn't a perfect answer tied with a bow of vengeance. Laura had chosen her own death. And she had done it without Cecilia. That was the part that cut deepest. Not the pain. Not the secrecy. But the exclusion. Laura had taken that last decision, the biggest, final, irreversible one, and left Cecilia behind in the dark. I would have stayed. Cecilia wanted to scream it at the sky. I would have carried you. I would have given you everything. You didn't have to leave me alone. But she had. And now Cecilia was left with a grief she no longer knew how to name. Rage didn't fit anymore. Vengeance felt false. All she had now was the shape of loss, and a vampire who haunted her not with threats, but with truths. She slept on a park bench as the sun rose, letting the cold seep into her bones like penance. She didn't dream. She hadn't, not since that night 5 years ago. When she woke, her phone had 7 missed calls from an unknown number. And a message. One word. Hunters. No signature. No explanation. But she knew who had sent it. Adriana. Cecilia didn't reply. She just stood up, legs stiff, jaw clenched, and walked straight to the small weapons stash she kept hidden under the floorboards of her garage. The knife was still stained from a hunt 2 years ago. She didn't care. She grabbed it, along with her silver bullets and her rage, and headed back toward the chapel. But the chapel was empty. The trapdoor open. The chamber below abandoned. No scent. No trace. She was gone. Cecilia paced the ruins like a caged animal, every part of her pulsing with adrenaline. Why had Adriana warned her? If she thought Cecilia wanted her dead, she could have disappeared in silence. But she hadn't. She'd sent a message. A warning.
Why?
Because maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to die.
Not now.
Not like this. Not by their hands. Cecilia didn't think, she just moved. She went to the places she thought Adriana might hide. The cemetery, the woods, even the rooftop of the old post office where shadows lingered longer than they should. Nothing. Until she turned the corner of the alley behind the bookstore and stopped cold. Adriana was there, barefoot.
Coat gone.
Hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes burned like coals in the fading light. You came, she said, as if surprised. Where are they? Cecilia demanded.
2 blocks east.
An abandoned motel. They're waiting for me. I have until sunset. Why tell me? Adriana stepped forward, close enough for Cecilia to smell the rain on her skin. Because I didn't survive this long just to be executed by men with guns and crosses. Cecilia narrowed her eyes. You want my help? No, Adriana said. I want you to decide. Cecilia froze. Decide what? If you still want to kill me, Adriana whispered. Or if you're going to let them do it for you. Her voice didn't shake, but her eyes did. And for the first time, Cecilia saw fear there. Not the fear of death, but of being erased, forgotten, like she had never mattered at all. Something twisted inside her chest. You think I'd protect you? Adriana didn't answer. You think after everything, I'd risk my life to save yours? Still silence. Cecilia stepped forward, furious now. Furious at the weight in her chest. At the way her breath stuttered. At the part of her that wanted to say yes. You think I care? She snapped. You think I feel sorry for you? That I see some broken little immortal in the dark and suddenly all the blood on your hands disappears? No, Adriana said. I think you hate me. And I think some part of you still needs me alive. To keep hating. To keep asking questions. To keep Laura close. Cecilia's mouth went dry. Because it was true. She didn't know who she was without that rage. Without the story she'd told herself every night for 5 years. If Adriana died, the war ended. And then what? Silence? Forgiveness? Emptiness? If I save you, she said slowly, what happens next? Adriana looked up at her, something unbearably soft in her expression. Then you'll have to find a new reason to live. The words hit like a slap. Cecilia stepped back, heart in freefall. She should walk away. She should let the hunters find her. But her feet didn't move. Her hands clenched tighter around the knife. And she hated the way her pulse quickened when Adriana stepped just a little closer. Let me show you where they are, Adriana said. And then you can decide. Cecilia followed. Again. The motel was a ruin, graffiti, broken windows, bloodstains on the walls. Inside, it smelled like rot and silver. 2 men waited in the main room, both armed. One of them, tall, pale, eyes like ice, turned to Cecilia. You're late, he said. We've been tracking this leech for a month. Thought you'd want in. I do, Cecilia lied. Where is she? Last room on the left. She won't get far. The other man grinned. 1 bullet to the heart, maybe 2 for fun. Cecilia's stomach turned. She walked down the hall slowly, every step heavier than the last. At the door, she paused. Adriana waited inside, hands up, unarmed, eyes watching her with something between resignation and hope. Cecilia raised the gun. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered. Adriana didn't flinch. "I already do." Cecilia turned and fired. Once into the ceiling, once into the wall, loud enough to sound like a kill. Then she pulled Adriana through the back window and into the alley, her breath ragged, her body trembling. They ran. Together. Into the night. Into something they didn't have words for yet. They didn't speak for hours. After the escape, after the gunshots and the breathless sprint through alleyways and abandoned streets, after the adrenaline drained and their bodies ached from too much tension and not enough air, they found shelter in the basement of an old bookstore, its lock broken, the cellar untouched for what felt like decades. It was dark, damp, and full of dust and forgotten pages, but it was quiet.
Safe. For now.
Cecilia sat with her back against the cold stone wall, her gun on the floor beside her, her limbs heavy with exhaustion she didn't want to admit. Across from her, Adriana crouched low, her long legs folded beneath her, blood streaked across her temple from where the window had sliced her skin. The wound wasn't healing fast. That surprised Cecilia. She stared at it too long, looked away too fast. The silence between them was thick, pulsing. Not hostile, but dangerous. Heavy with all the things they didn't say, all the feelings Cecilia refused to name. Her body still trembled with aftershocks, of rage, of confusion, of something deeper, something she wasn't ready to face. Adriana was the enemy. She was the murderer, the monster, the woman who had taken Laura from her. And yet, when Cecilia had looked at her in that motel room, pale and still and waiting to die, all she had felt was the need to stop it. To intervene. To protect.
Why?
She didn't know. Or she didn't want to know. "You didn't have to come," Adriana said finally, voice low, hoarse, like broken velvet. Cecilia's eyes snapped to her. "You texted me. I didn't think you'd care." "I didn't," Cecilia said too fast. Her voice trailed off. Adriana watched her. That same maddening calm. That same endless patience that wasn't really patience. It was something else. Like sadness carved into silence. "You're bleeding," Cecilia muttered. Adriana raised a brow. "It'll stop." "It's not." "Silver-lined glass," Adriana said. "Slows it down. It'll pass. You need to rest." "I don't sleep."
Right.
"Immortal." Cecilia stood and began pacing, not because she had somewhere to go, but because stillness felt too much like surrender. "We can't stay here long. They'll keep looking." Adriana nodded. "I know." "Then say something useful." "I am," Adriana replied, tilting her head. "I'm saying thank you." Cecilia froze. Her hands curled into fists. "Don't." "Why?" "Because you don't get to be grateful," she hissed. "You don't get to look at me like that. Like this is some shared moment. Like we're on the same side." Adriana's eyes flashed, but not with anger. Something softer. Something that made Cecilia's chest hurt. "You saved me," she said. "Even when you didn't want to. That means something." "It means I'm a fool." "No," Adriana whispered. "It means you're human." Cecilia turned away, heart slamming against her ribs. She hated this. Hated how quiet the room was. Hated how much space Adriana took up even when she wasn't moving. Hated that she could still feel the echo of Laura in everything, her handwriting, her laugh, her absence. "She loved you," Cecilia said suddenly. Adriana didn't reply.
She didn't say it.
"But I know her. She wouldn't have gone to you unless she was desperate," Adriana said. "Don't romanticize it." "She was desperate," Cecilia snapped. "But that doesn't mean she didn't feel something." "Do you want her to have loved me?" Adriana asked, voice quiet. "Would that make it easier? To keep hating me?" Cecilia spun on her heel, eyes wild. "I don't hate you because she might have loved you. I hate you because she died in your arms instead of mine." Silence.
Pure and thick.
Adriana closed her eyes. "I tried to save her." "I know," Cecilia said. The words came out strangled. God help me, I know. She dropped to the floor again, legs giving out. Her hands covered her face. She breathed deep, but the air wasn't enough. It hadn't been enough in 5 years. You want to know the worst part? She whispered. Some nights, I don't remember her voice anymore. But I remember the scream. The sound she made when she died. Adriana's voice came soft. I hear it too. Cecilia looked up. Their eyes met. Something shifted. Something old and terrible and human. The room seemed to pull tighter around them. Cecilia crawled to the bookshelf, grabbed an old bottle of brandy from the top, wiped off the dust with the edge of her jacket, and took a deep swig. She handed it to Adriana without looking. Adriana took it,
Drank. Winced.
Still burns, she said. Cecilia laughed. A broken, raw sound. At least that makes 2 of us. They passed the bottle back and forth in silence. Minutes stretched. The tension curled between them like smoke, slow and inevitable. Cecilia's shoulder brushed Adriana's once. Then again. Neither moved away. Do you miss her? Cecilia asked. Adriana didn't hesitate. Every night. Cecilia nodded. Me too. Another beat. But I think I miss the idea of her more than the woman she really was. Adriana's brow furrowed. Why? Because I'm starting to realize how much she kept from me. How many truths she buried while pretending everything was fine. She was trying to protect you. Or she didn't trust me enough to stay, Cecilia said. Adriana looked at her, long and quiet. Would you have stayed? Cecilia didn't answer. She didn't know anymore. The air between them felt thick, charged. Adriana leaned in slightly. Not enough to touch, but enough to feel. Her voice came barely above a whisper. I shouldn't say this. Then don't. But I see her in you, Adriana said. The way you fight. The way you refuse to break. It's familiar, but it's not the same. Cecilia turned, slowly. Their faces inches apart. Her voice shook. You think this is okay? That we can just sit here, drink, talk like this? You think I've forgiven you? No, Adriana said. But I think part of you wants to. The air burned. Cecilia's hands trembled. She hated how close they were. Hated the part of her that didn't want to pull away. Adriana's gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second. Cecilia noticed. Her breath caught. Don't, she warned. I'm not touching you, Adriana whispered. You are, Cecilia breathed. You've been touching me since the night you left those roses. Adriana leaned back just enough to break the spell. Cecilia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her body was on fire. Her heart was a war zone. We should sleep, Cecilia said. You said you don't sleep. I don't, Adriana replied. But I'll watch over you. Don't flatter yourself. It's not flattery. It's penance. Cecilia turned her back to her. Laid down on the hard stone floor. Every part of her screamed in confusion, in ache, in guilt. But she didn't stop Adriana when she sat close enough for their shadows to blend on the wall. And when she finally drifted off, in that cold, cursed cellar, it was the first time in years she didn't dream of Laura's scream, but of a woman with ancient eyes, sitting in silence, keeping watch. She woke to the sound of breathing. Not loud, not frantic, just steady, deliberate, a rhythm that didn't belong to her own body. For a moment, Cecilia didn't move. She stayed curled on the stone floor, eyes closed, heart quiet, trying to convince herself that she hadn't slept next to a vampire, that the warmth she'd felt during the night had been a dream, not the presence of the woman who'd ruined everything. But when she opened her eyes, Adriana was there. Sitting against the wall, hands folded, her face half-lit by the faint sliver of light sneaking through a crack in the boarded-up window. She looked like a statue. Eternal. Unreachable. But her eyes were open, watching Cecilia. And something in them wasn't cold. Something in them was waiting. Cecilia sat up too fast. Her body ached.
Her throat was dry.
Her emotions were a storm. How long was I out? 7 hours, Adriana said, without looking away. You twitched a lot. You talked in your sleep. Cecilia's stomach twisted. What did I say? You called my name. Silence.
Raw. Sharp.
Like something sacred had been cracked open and left to bleed. Cecilia stood.
Fast.
Too fast. I need air. You need food, Adriana said, standing too. You haven't eaten in nearly 2 days. Don't pretend to care. I'm not pretending. Cecilia turned on her. Stop acting like you're something human. Like you're some misunderstood saint. You've killed people. Yes. Adriana's voice was calm. So have you. That hit harder than it should have. Cecilia's jaw clenched. Only monsters. Define monster, Adriana said quietly. Is it the teeth? The hunger? Or the grief? Cecilia stormed toward the staircase. I'm going to find something to eat. Stay here. Don't move. As you wish, Adriana murmured. Cecilia didn't slam the door behind her.
But she wanted to.
She wandered for hours. The bookstore was in a part of town no one cared about, too close to the train tracks, too far from the shops. She found a corner cafe, paid in cash, avoided eye contact. She chewed slowly, her thoughts louder than the world. She couldn't stop thinking about the way Adriana had looked at her, or the way her name had sounded from her mouth, or the fact that, yes, she had dreamed about her. She dreamed of shadows, of cold hands, of lips almost touching hers. God, she hated that dream, hated that it had felt good, that it hadn't been Laura in her arms, but Adriana, that the warmth had stayed even after she woke. She went back to the basement just before sunset, her chest tight, her hands cold. Adriana was standing when she entered, pacing now, restless.
Someone was here, she said.
Cecilia froze. What? I smelled them. Another hunter.
Male. Young.
He stood near the door for 10 minutes. Then he left. How long ago? 20 minutes. Cecilia's heart dropped. They found us. Not yet, Adriana said. But they will. We need to move. Agreed. They packed quickly. Cecilia grabbed the gun. Adriana retrieved a black satchel she kept hidden in the wall, contents unknown. They didn't speak as they climbed out into the evening. The street was quiet.
Too quiet.
Every corner felt like a trap. Every shadow, a threat. They walked fast, turning into alley after alley, until they reached an old greenhouse at the edge of town. Glass shattered, vines reclaiming the space. Cecilia led them in. She'd found this place years ago, one of the many hiding spots she'd cataloged in her obsessive search for monsters. Funny how she'd become the thing she once hunted. They set up in silence. The air inside smelled of wet leaves and dust. Moonlight spilled through the broken ceiling, casting jagged patterns on the floor. Adriana walked to the center of the room, lifted her face toward the moon, and stood still. Cecilia watched her, unwilling, unready, unable to stop. You used to be something else, she said finally. Before all this. Before Laura. What were you? Adriana didn't move.
Alive.
That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. Cecilia stepped closer. Why do you talk like this? Like you're already dead. Adriana turned, slowly. Because I don't belong in this world. I haven't for a long time. I only stayed because of her. And now I stay for you. Cecilia's breath caught. Don't.
Why?
Because I can't forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Adriana stepped closer. I'm only asking you to see me. I do, Cecilia whispered. That's the problem. The space between them shrank, breath by breath, inch by inch. Cecilia could feel the heat of her, or maybe it was her own. Her fingers trembled. Her heart thundered. And then Adriana reached up.
Slowly, gently.
Her hand brushed Cecilia's jaw, fingertips barely touching skin. Cecilia didn't move.
Couldn't.
She hated the shiver that ran down her spine. Hated how long it had been since someone touched her without taking. You're warm, Adriana murmured. I expected cold. I'm angry, Cecilia said. So am I. I should hate you. I know. Cecilia closed her eyes. Her body was fire. Her mind was ice.
Her soul didn't know which to follow.
What do you want from me? She asked. Adriana's voice was soft. Everything you can give me. Cecilia opened her eyes. Then why are you still here? Because I'm not afraid to want it anyway. Their foreheads touched.
Just barely.
Cecilia didn't know who moved first. She didn't care. Her hands found Adriana's coat. Adriana's hands slid behind her neck. The space between them shattered. Their lips didn't meet.
Not yet, but they hovered there.
Suspended, breathing each other in. Fire and ash and grief and hunger. Cecilia pulled away. Not yet. No, Adriana said. But soon. Cecilia stepped back, breath ragged. I need to think. Then I'll wait. Don't wait for me. Too late. The tension was a living thing now. They slept far apart that night. But neither of them truly slept. They just stared at the ceiling. At the broken glass. At the moonlight spilling over the floor like a promise neither of them could make. The first shot shattered the greenhouse window before dawn. Cecilia had been half awake, her hand already on the gun beneath her jacket, her nerves too wired to truly sleep. The sound, sharp, violent, final, wasn't surprising. She'd known they would come. She just didn't expect them to come this fast. Adriana was already moving before the glass hit the floor, her body a blur of instinct and muscle memory, dragging Cecilia behind the largest stone planter just as a second bullet tore through the air. Two of them, Adriana whispered, breath cool against her ear. Possibly three. Clothes. Weapons. Silver-tipped.
Blessed.
Standard protocol. Cecilia peered out just enough to glimpse movement beyond the ruined glass walls, shadows slipping between vines and debris, footsteps calculated, quiet.
Trained.
These weren't amateurs. These were killers. And one of them had a vendetta. Stay down, Cecilia said. Don't try to be noble. I'm not interested in nobility, Adriana replied. Only survival. Good, Cecilia said, rising with the gun already aimed. Because I'm not interested in losing you. The words came before she could stop them. They hung in the air between them, heavier than the bullets. But there was no time to unravel them. A figure appeared at the broken entrance, rifle raised, face hidden behind a tactical mask. Cecilia fired once, clean, direct, a warning, and the figure ducked behind cover. Another shot rang out from the left, missing Adriana's head by inches. They scrambled.
Moved fast.
Adriana was a blur of shadow and bone, moving like something born of the night. Cecilia followed her lead, ducking low, firing when she could, always aiming to injure, not kill. She wasn't ready to add more blood to her hands, not tonight. Not with Adriana beside her. Then a voice cut through the gunfire.
Low. Male.
Familiar. You should have stayed away, Cecilia. She froze.
Turned.
Gabriel. The man stepped into the moonlight, mask removed, face sharp and hollowed by time. She hadn't seen him in years. Not since a vampire tore through their mutual contact in Bucharest. Not since he held her back while she screamed into the snow. You know her? Adriana asked, tense. He was a friend, Cecilia said. Past tense. And I'm still trying to save you, Gabriel said. This thing you're with, it's not Laura. It's not even close. Cecilia raised her gun. You don't know a damn thing about her. I know she killed your wife. She tried to save her. Gabriel scoffed. You've gone soft. Or blind. And you've gone cold, Cecilia said. What happened to you? I watched too many people die, he said. Watched vampires tear families apart. Watched you waste your life chasing someone who should be ash. She's not the one who ruined me, Cecilia growled. You are. You all are. You fed my rage. You kept me broken because it served you. Gabriel's face twisted. You've lost your mind. No, Cecilia said. I finally found it. He raised his gun. Adriana moved.
Fast.
Too fast. A blur of darkness and wind and teeth. She disarmed Gabriel in a single motion, knocking him to the ground, her knee pressing hard against his chest. She didn't bare her fangs.
She didn't bite.
She just held him there, trembling, eyes wild. Go, Cecilia said.
Leave.
Before I change my mind. Gabriel stared up at her. You'll regret this. I already regret everything else, she said. He fled, limping, shaking.
Gone.
Silence fell. Adriana stood slowly, shoulders tense, eyes unreadable. Cecilia didn't speak, didn't move. The tension in the air snapped like lightning. You didn't kill him, Cecilia said. You could have. You didn't want me to, Adriana replied. So I didn't. That answer shouldn't have made Cecilia's heart stutter. But it did. She walked toward her slowly. Adriana didn't back away. Their faces were inches apart now, breathing heavy, blood on their hands, dirt on their skin, and still drawn to each other like magnets.
Why?
Cecilia whispered. Why me? Why now? Because I've lived centuries without feeling anything, Adriana said. And then you happened. Cecilia's hand trembled as she reached up, brushing a streak of dirt from Adriana's cheek. I hate you, she said. I know. I still want to kill you. Then do it, Adriana said, voice like smoke. But kiss me first. Cecilia didn't hesitate. She pulled Adriana to her by the collar, mouths crashing together in a kiss that was brutal, breathless, born of pain and longing and 5 years of silence. Adriana kissed her back like she'd been waiting for this moment through every century she'd survived. There was nothing soft about it, nothing kind. It was fire and blood and grief and hunger. Cecilia bit her lip. Adriana groaned. Their hands clutched at coats and skin and memories. When they finally pulled apart, gasping, Cecilia's forehead rested against Adriana's. We're insane, she whispered. Yes, Adriana said. But it feels good. Cecilia laughed. A real laugh.
Broken. Bright. Alive.
We can't stay here, she said. No, Adriana agreed. But we don't have to run alone anymore. You trust me? Cecilia asked. With my life, Adriana answered. With my death. They left the greenhouse hand in hand. No promises. No guarantees. Just fire in their chests and blood on their lips. Something had changed. Irrevocably. And neither of them would ever be the same again. They didn't speak as they ran. The air was cold against their flesh skin, their steps uneven across cracked pavement and wet leaves, and every streetlight they passed cast long shadows that stretched like claws, chasing them into the unknown. Cecilia felt the echo of Adriana's mouth on hers, still burning, still shaking something loose in her chest that she couldn't pin down. The kiss had been too much and not enough. 5 years of rage, grief, unanswered questions, and now this wild, forbidden need coursing beneath her skin. But there was no time to think about it now. They needed to disappear. Again. They found shelter in a forgotten building outside the edge of town, a crumbling observatory covered in ivy, its dome cracked, the glass broken. No one came here. No one even remembered it existed. Adriana had passed it days ago while scouting. It's temporary, she said as they stepped inside, their voices bouncing off the stone. But it will hold. Cecilia collapsed into a chair that had long since lost its cushion. Her body ached. Her lips still tingled. Her fingers twitched from the adrenaline. You kissed me, she said finally. Adriana, standing near the window, didn't turn around. You kissed me back. That wasn't the plan. You never had a plan. I had revenge. You had pain, Adriana said softly, and no one to share it with. Cecilia clenched her jaw. Don't analyze me like you know me. Adriana turned then, slow and careful. But I do. I've watched you for 5 years. I've studied you in silence. I've mourned with you in the shadows. I've seen you fall apart, alone, screaming into empty rooms. You think I don't know you, Cecilia? I know every breath you take. That should have made her furious. It should have terrified her. But all it did was pull her deeper into the madness of it all. And yet, Cecilia said bitterly, you still think I'm capable of loving you. No, Adriana said. But I think you're already halfway there. Cecilia didn't respond. She couldn't. Because some part of her, shaking and cracked and furious, knew Adriana was right. There was something real between them. Something that had no name yet. Something built on loss and need and impossible truth. She stood and walked toward the broken telescope, peering through it even though the glass was useless. She needed the distance. "Tell me about her," she said. "Not Laura. The one before." Adriana stilled. "What do you mean?" "The way you look at me sometimes," Cecilia said, not turning. "It's not just about Laura. It's deeper. Older. Who is she?" A long pause. Then Adriana said, "Her name was Isadora." Cecilia felt the pang. Sharp. Unreasonable. Jealousy. When? Late 1800s.
Paris.
She was human. A painter. Brilliant.
Wild.
Self-destructive. "You loved her?" "I thought I did," Adriana replied. "Until I realized what I really loved was how she saw me. Like I wasn't a monster." Cecilia turned then. "What happened to her?" "She begged me to turn her. I refused. I always refused back then. I thought I was protecting them. And she died?" Adriana nodded. "Consumption. Alone. Angry. I visited her grave every year until I left Europe." Cecilia hated the sting in her throat. She hated that she wasn't the first to make Adriana feel this way. She hated that she cared at all. "So Laura wasn't your first heartbreak," she said. "No," Adriana admitted. "But she was the deepest." "And me." Cecilia's voice cracked. "What am I?" Adriana looked at her like she was looking at the edge of the world. "You're the one I never allowed myself to want." That silence again. Heavy. Suffocating. Cecilia stepped back. "This is insane." "It is," Adriana said. "But it's real. Real gets people killed. So does denial." Cecilia opened her mouth to argue when a sound cut through the air. Footsteps. A slow, deliberate clap. And then a voice, rich, feminine, soaked in old power. Well, how romantic. They both turned. A woman stood at the doorway.
Tall.
Regal. Skin the color of moonlight. Eyes like obsidian. A long crimson coat flowed behind her like blood trailing in her wake. Cecilia instinctively raised her weapon. Adriana's voice dropped to a whisper. "Vivian." Cecilia narrowed her eyes. "Friend of yours?" Adriana didn't move. "She's my maker." Cecilia felt the ground shift beneath her. "You're joking." "Unfortunately, no," Vivian said, stepping closer, lips curling into a smile. "And I must say, I'm very disappointed in you, Moncur. Falling in love with the widow of your greatest failure? How poetic. How tragic." "Why are you here?" Adriana asked. Her voice had changed hollow, cold. Cecilia didn't like it. Vivian's smile widened. "Because your sins have grown louder. And the council has sent me to clean them up." "Council?" Cecilia repeated. "There's a vampire council? You didn't think we were all chaos and romance, did you?" Vivian said, eyes gleaming. "Even monsters need rules. And Adriana has broken many. By surviving?" Cecilia asked. "By feeling," Vivian replied. She was made to obey, not to love. "Screw your rules." "How mortal of you," Vivian said. "But sweet, really? You think your love story is special, that it will change her fate." She turned to Adriana. "It won't." Adriana stepped in front of Cecilia. "You'll have to go through me. I intend to." And then she moved.
Fast.
Too fast. Cecilia barely had time to duck before Vivian's hand struck Adriana across the face, sending her flying into the telescope. Glass shattered. Blood spilled. Cecilia fired twice, but the bullets did nothing. Vivian snarled. "You think you can protect her?" "No," Cecilia growled. "I will." She threw herself at Vivian, blade drawn, heart pounding. The fight was chaos, silver and fangs and the blur of old hatred reborn. Adriana, bleeding, rose behind her, joining the fray. They fought together, not as enemies, not as predator and prey, but as something more. As a team. As a promise. It wasn't enough. Vivian was too strong. Too old. She pinned Adriana to the floor, hand around her throat. Last words, child. I should have killed you centuries ago, Adriana hissed. Cecilia lunged and drove her blade into Vivian's back. The scream that followed cracked the air like lightning. Vivian recoiled. Adriana moved. And together they struck. Vivian collapsed. Not dead, but weakened, fading. Adriana crawled to Cecilia, panting, bloodied, trembling. You saved me. We saved each other. You could have run. I'm tired of running. Adriana leaned in. Do you still hate me? Yes, Cecilia said, but not enough. Their mouths met again. This time, slower.
Softer.
But no less dangerous. Cecilia didn't care about rules anymore.
About the past.
About the war between them. All she knew was that when she kissed Adriana, the world stopped hurting for a moment.
And that was enough.
They ran until the sun touched the edge of the sky, blood drying on their skin, silence trailing behind them like smoke. Vivian was gone, defeated, but not dead. And that meant the council knew. That meant it wasn't over. Cecilia's lungs burned. Her muscles ached. Her heart thudded with every step as if trying to break through her chest and scream a name she was no longer trying to deny. Adriana. Adriana, who had fought for her, bled for her, kissed her like she was made of answers and sin. They didn't speak as they reached the safe house, an abandoned vineyard an hour outside the city, a place Cecilia had once considered too remote to be useful. Now it was salvation. The heavy wooden door groaned as it opened. Dust floated in the light. Vines crept through cracks in the walls. Everything smelled like memory. Cecilia locked the door behind them and collapsed against it. Adriana stood in the center of the room, her coat gone, her shirt torn, blood caked around her temple. She looked ruined, beautiful, infinite. Cecilia stared at her like someone drowning. Take your shirt off, she said. Adriana blinked. Are we doing this now? I need to see how bad it is. Adriana hesitated, then obeyed, slowly, carefully, revealing skin pale as frost, marred by bruises and deep crimson gashes. Cecilia crossed the room and touched one of them gently. Adriana flinched. That hurts. Only when you do it. Good, Cecilia murmured. Means you're still here. Adriana's voice dropped. Where else would I be? Cecilia met her eyes.
Dead. Gone. Lost.
Like everyone else I've ever loved. Adriana reached up and took her hand. Not this time. Cecilia didn't realize she was crying until Adriana brushed a tear away with the back of her knuckle. Stop, Cecilia whispered. If you touch me like that, I won't be able to think straight. Then don't think. That was all it took. The tension between them, sharp and molten and unbearable, shattered in a breath. Cecilia surged forward, capturing Adriana's mouth in a kiss that was hunger and desperation and fury all tangled into one impossible moment. Adriana kissed her back with equal force, her hands threading into Cecilia's hair, tugging just enough to make her gasp. There was no gentleness, not at first. They were two storms colliding. Mouths and teeth and blood and memory. Cecilia pushed her against the nearest wall, her lips traveling along Adriana's jaw, her hands roaming over bare skin that felt like cold fire. Adriana groaned, a sound that made Cecilia's knees go weak. I should hate you, Cecilia said between kisses. You do, Adriana whispered. But not tonight. Clothes fell. The weight of 5 years dissolved in heat and friction and skin. Cecilia mapped every inch of her like a battleground. Every scar. Every gasp. Every tremor. Adriana worshipped her in return, reverent and raw, like Cecilia was both salvation and punishment. And when they finally collapsed onto the floor, tangled in each other, the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was sacred. Cecilia lay with her head on Adriana's chest, listening to the heartbeat that wasn't supposed to be there. You shouldn't have won, she said. I don't, Adriana replied. But with you, sometimes it comes back. Cecilia wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or both. Instead, she said, you said you loved Laura. I did. Do you love me? Adriana was quiet for a long time. Then, yes. Cecilia closed her eyes. I don't know if I can say it back. You don't have to. But I feel it, she whispered. In pieces. In places. And that terrifies me. Then let it. Cecilia looked up at her. What happens now? Adriana's hand traced the line of her shoulder. Now we run again. Forever. As long as it takes. And if they catch us? Then we fight. Together. Cecilia kissed her again. Slower this time. Deep and unhurried. I'm yours, she said. Not just tonight. Not just because I'm broken, but because something about you makes me feel alive again. Adriana pulled her close. And you make me feel like I was never dead. They slept curled together on the stone floor, the scent of earth and old wine around them, the stars watching through the broken ceiling.
But the peace didn't last.
At dawn, a sound. Subtle. Precise. A blade unsheathed outside the door. Cecilia's eyes snapped open. Adriana was already sitting up. They found us. Cecilia grabbed her gun. How many? Adriana listened. Too many. Can we fight them? Not all of them. Cecilia's heart twisted. Then we have to run. No, Adriana said. You have to run. I'm not leaving you. You have to. If they catch me, they'll use me to get to you. But if I turn myself in... No, Cecilia stood, fury in her chest. Don't you dare make this decision for me. I'm not, Adriana said. I'm begging you. Let me protect you this time. Let me do something right. Cecilia shook her head, trembling. I just got you. I just let myself feel this. Adriana touched her cheek, kissed her one last time, slow, lingering, desperate. That's why I have to go. If you die, I won't, Adriana whispered. Not until I see you again. Cecilia clutched her tighter, their foreheads pressed together, breathing the same trembling air. Don't make me bury you too. Adriana smiled, sad and small. You never buried Laura. Maybe that's why you could love me. And before Cecilia could stop her, Adriana opened the door. Light poured in, and the night was gone. It rained on the day Cecilia decided to stop waiting. Not the kind of gentle rain that kissed the rooftops and whispered through the trees, but a violent storm, hard and cold and furious, as if the sky itself had finally decided to grieve with her. It had been 47 hours since Adriana vanished beyond that door, her final kiss still etched into Cecilia's mouth, her scent clinging to her clothes, her name an open wound she carried like a brand. The council hadn't sent a message. No demands. No threats. No answers. They hadn't needed to. They expected silence. Surrender. They expected Cecilia to let Adriana vanish like every other ghost in her life. They were wrong. She knew where they had taken her. A place whispered about in vampire records she'd once stolen from a hunter's safe, the Chapel of Ash, a fortress beneath the bones of a ruined monastery where traitors went to die. Adriana had once told her no one ever left the chapel, but Adriana had never loved someone like this before, and Cecilia had never been this dangerous. She packed light, weapons she could hide under her coat, silver-lined blades, fire ampoules, a single vial of Adriana's blood, taken that night in the greenhouse after their first kiss, a trace she kept without knowing why. Now it was the only thing that might lead her back. She found the chapel at midnight, hidden in the hills, buried in ivy and fog, its entrance half swallowed by earth. She stepped through ancient stone with nothing but fury in her chest and love in her throat. No hesitation. No second thoughts. Just her. Always her. The air inside was cold, wet, choked with power. The kind of silence that felt like a warning. She moved fast. Knew the architecture from stolen blueprints. Vaulted ceilings. Spiral staircases. 1,000 doors, and none of them marked. But blood speaks when words don't. The vial pulsed in her pocket. Guided her. She followed its hum. Its heat. Its memory.
Down. Down.
Until she found a door unlike the rest, thick iron, flanked by two sentinels with eyes like winter. They raised their weapons. Cecilia raised her hand. A pulse of fire. Silver flame ignited from her ampoule, searing the air between them. One fell.
The other charged.
She drove her blade through his ribs, the scream echoing off stone. She kicked open the door, heart slamming against her ribs, breath coming in short, brutal gasps. And there she was, shackled, bleeding, kneeling in a ring of salt and shadow, her skin paler than snow, her lips split, her wrists raw. Adriana. Cecilia moved without thought, crossed the chamber in seconds, fell to her knees. Adriana. Her name cracked in her mouth like lightning. Adriana looked up.
Barely.
You came. Of course I came, Cecilia said, hands already working the locks. You idiot. You stubborn, noble, insufferable idiot. Adriana laughed, blood in her teeth. You're beautiful when you're angry. I'll kill you if you say that again. You'd miss me. Not today. The final lock gave way. Adriana collapsed into her arms. Cecilia caught her, held her, clutched her like something holy. We have to go. They'll be waiting. Let them. But before they could move, a voice echoed from the dark. Touch her again, and I'll rip out your spine. Cecilia turned. A woman stepped from the shadows, taller than Vivian, cloaked in black and crowned with bone. Her eyes glowed like dying stars. I am Lady Morel, she said, executor of the council. Then you're in my way, Cecilia said. She's guilty, Morel snapped. Of betrayal. Of loving a mortal. Of killing her maker. She did all of that, Cecilia said, standing, drawing her blade. And I do it again with her. Morel sneered. You think love excuses treason? I think love explains it. Morel moved.
Fast.
But Cecilia was faster. Not in body, but in purpose. She fought with everything. Every year of grief. Every unanswered question. Every second she'd spent building herself into a weapon. And beside her, rising despite her wounds, Adriana joined the fight. Together, they were chaos. Fire and fangs. Blade and shadow. The room burned. Screams echoed. And in the end, Morel fell. A flash of silver. A gasp. Silence. Adriana dropped her weapon. Fell into Cecilia's arms. I thought you were my punishment, she whispered. But you were my redemption. Cecilia kissed her, slow and deep and full of every moment they'd lost. You're mine, she said. Now and always. They fled into the night before the rest of the council arrived. The rain had stopped. The stars had returned. They drove for hours. No destination. Just distance. Just escape. Just each other. In the safety of a motel by the sea, Cecilia stitched Adriana's wounds by candlelight. Adriana didn't flinch. Just watched her with something soft in her eyes. Do you think it's possible? She asked. What?
Peace.
Cecilia looked up. I don't know, but I think we can build it. One day. One town. One kiss at a time. Adriana smiled. I'd like that. They didn't speak of the past again. Not that night. Not in that room. They curled into each other beneath the blanket, hearts finally beating in sync, breath steady, hands entwined. Cecilia traced the line of Adriana's collarbone, memorizing every inch like a map. You still send me roses, she whispered. Why? Adriana kissed her knuckles. Because it's the only thing that ever bloomed after I touched it. Cecilia smiled. You were wrong.
About what?
You touched me, and I bloomed. Dawn came soft and golden. For the first time in years, neither of them ran. They just stayed. Together. Thank you so much for being here and for believing in this channel. If you feel in your heart, you can donate with super thanks so I can focus more and more on this project. Your support helps me keep creating these love stories and bringing them to life for you. See you in the next video.